It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. From the brand new album, In a Mirror Darkly, that is a tune called The Armageddon Machine. And on the phone right now is the originator of the Armageddon Machine, the original bass player, the original guy left in the band, Mekong Delta. It's Ralf Hubert. Ralf, how are you, man?
I'm very fine. How are you?
Excellent, man. Well, Ralf, I've got to tell you, just right off the top, this album, the brand new one, In a Mirror Darkly, it's definitely not a first listen. It's not one of those that you listen to once and you're like, oh yeah, that's it. You really have to dig into it to get it a little bit, especially because the lyrics are so dark and deep. But man, this thing is absolutely killer, man. So great job right off the bat.
Thanks for that compliment, but I think you have to dig all the time really deep into the stuff of Mekong Delta. That's what I was told by fans.
Well, that's true, but this one it just seems like more than some of the stuff in the past. To be honest, this one does kind of feel like it's it's almost a sequel to Wanderer of the Edge of Time. Yeah, but at the same. Do you get that a lot?
You're right. It's a sequel. Yeah, you are right. It's a sequel.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
he was at least that I tried to continue the story of the Wanderer, so it's a sequel, especially in the kind of a lyrical way. And if you come to the point of the music, I try all the time to build up on the last album I have done. So it's a logical step forward that it is different. But it's also, the roots are in the Wanderer one, as the roots of the Wanderer in the Lurking Fear and so on, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Now, it did take you a while to get this one out. 4 years in between records. What was being done during that time? Did it just take you that long to where you got comfortable with the story and the next steps that you were writing?
Yeah, in one way, but the different thing to most other composers is that I need a long time to find out what I really would like to get. See, it's that way that, for example, if I finished Wanderer, I already got a pool, I got a whole bunch of stuff which I know that is quite good, but would not fit to this album Wanderer, for example. Mm-hmm. So I put it beside and say, okay, for further use. And if I say, okay, let's continue with making a new album, I dig into the stuff and try to find out which could be fine for a new album. And if I find this are only riffs, which I got in this pool, and if I find out the riffs, and if I talk to Eric, the guitar player, and he says, okay, this is playable in that way or in that way, then I have to start to compose the whole song. And the deal is that I started composing In a Mirror Darkly, I think 1.5 years ago. And on the other hand is that we, in all this, the 4 years ago, we already recorded in between a record called Intersections, mm-hmm. where we fulfill a wish of a lot of fans who ask us on live concerts whether we would do them the favor and play some of the old stuff with the new formation, what we did. So we played Intersections with mainly contents of old stuff, new interpreted. And so that also takes a year.
Sure. Now, talk about Intersections a little bit. I mean, as you said, it is a collection, re-recorded with the current lineup of the band. When you do something like that, especially for you personally, who wrote all of the old stuff, does it give a different life, to the songs for you? Because obviously it's played in a different way by the guitarists and singers and whatnot.
Yeah, this is one of the points, and the other point is, I'm one of those persons who never is satisfied with everything he's done. And if I go back to the 90s, for example, you got a real hard time recording this complicated stuff because we never have the budget to go into the studio where we got 2 times a 48 track or something like that.
Right.
We all the time have to deal with on a 24 track. And it's quite hard if you got about, let's say, about 40 different voices or lines to place them on a 24 machine. So the new experience is, after starting with the 20th century, is that every one of us is endorsed by several companies who make computer stuff. And so nowadays you are able to make up to, let's say, 200 tracks if we want.
Sure.
And this yeah, this came up to the point that you can really say, okay, we can try everything and we don't have to stand around the mixing desk with 10 people putting on and putting off some tracks. So you can really do this, and you can come closer to the result you maybe would like to get in the past. But anyhow, in the past, it was done as it could be done at this time, and the riffs have been played well there. But as Mekong Delta all the time goes ahead a bit, for the people nowadays, for the musician, it's a little bit easier to play the stuff as the time as he played, for example, let's say The Cure. The Cure is a real old song from Intersections, and it was composed in 1986. And this kind of riffing, this legio, was at this kind of time played by no one without orchestral musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And so Frank Fricke at the time had to find a total new technique on guitar. But now that is quite common, for Mekong Delta especially, but a lot of other groups take over this technique.
Sure. Now, listening through your career, I don't want to say that your style has changed, but it's grown. It just seems like when you guys came out initially with the self-titled, especially, you were almost more of a straight up thrash band. I mean, I guess thrash is probably not exactly what you were doing, but you were closer to being a thrash band than progressive. And it just seems like as you've grown through the years, you've added more and more progressive metal elements to your music. Is that something that you've done on purpose, or is that just the way you've developed as a writer?
It's both. The funny thing is, I have to go back to an old colleague of mine, or colleague, I think. Colleague, is it right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? An old friend, an old colleague.
Right, colleague. Right.
Colleague, yeah. Jörg, and the deal is that the first album was composed after we met one evening. I know him well as a session drummer. He plays on Stratovarius and several other groups in the past. And he came up to me with this demo of Metallica at this time. And it was this Fight Fire with Fire, where was a kind of a special rhythm inside,
mm-hmm.
which never had been heard before in metal. And so we discussed it. I told him, oh, that's nice, but you can do that much better. And so I composed some stuff. I think there were 4 titles I composed and played them to him 1 week later. And he was so deeply impressed that we directly had to go into his room, or her room, where he did drums. And so we played it directly, and it came out at this time as I worked together with him. He's more into metal and into thrash. That the whole stuff comes more thrashy. And the deal is that from my part of view, I'm more from the classical side. Mm-hmm. I prefer to listen to people like Prokofiev, Stravinsky, and so it's natural that this influence came in more and more over the years, because I try all the time to never repeat myself, because if I notice that I repeat myself on an album, I immediately stop the song and throw it into the trash can, because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, to repeat yourself, because
Sure.
That's boring for the people and at least boring for you.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And where you mentioned that you bring a very classical ear and writing style to your music, it certainly takes center stage on a couple of the tunes on the new record, In a Mirror Darkly. Songs like The Sliver in God's Eye is an example. It's almost orchestral, the way it builds and, the instrumentation and everything before it hits its climax, more or less. When you were working on this album, is that kind of the direction you were trying to push yourself even more into? Not that you haven't done that before, but it just seems like this song, or like Janus and whatnot, those songs have really captured a lot more of that classical sound.
Yeah, that's right, what you're saying. The deal, at least, is that one of my goals from the start point on was that I would like to establish, for example, an electric guitar as an orchestral instrument. And I all the time try over the years to show that it is possible to use rock instruments as classical instruments. And the more I experience playing classical stuff as a group, I came up to that point that I first got a step that I tried to integrate a group into an orchestra, but nowadays use electric instrument group instruments more like orchestral instruments, and that for The Sliver in God's Eye sounds like it sounds. Mm-hmm. Especially if you also take the instrumental one inside the outside of the inside. It's also composed very classical from the manner, and it's mixed together with this rock style of the 70s, which I found personally very, very interesting because the electric instruments are used more or less as orchestral instruments.
Sure. Now, 30 years ago when you started this band, did you ever think 30 years later you'd still be making Mekong Delta records?
I was not quite sure, but it's like every musician who is deep in music, you can never stop.
Sure.
So it's all the time the same thing with me, sometimes because I've got a lot of other things which I like to do and which I can also live from is programming, doing 3D graphics and all this stuff. But all the time I came back to music because I play all the time music. My main instrument is a classical guitar, bass is only my side instrument, and I nearly play concert guitar every day so I think I was quite sure that I would make music 30 years later, but I was not sure that it was Mekong Delta.
Okay.
It was nice to work with all those guys together, and they all the time keep my back up to continue.
Sure. Now, Ralf, with In a Mirror Darkly, are you going to have the opportunity to get out and tour around Europe, or tour the world, or what are you getting to do?
I think a world tour is not in sight so far, but what would be nice. I would like to play in USA because Alex, our drummer, has played several times in USA so far. I think some of his groups, I don't know the name. He's playing so much groups I all the time forget the groups he's playing in. I think he was over there. He loves LA especially. He got some friends there. And we got some small offers for some small club tours, but the problem is the logistical problem.
Sure.
Behind that all the time. We got some offers for some big festivals in Europe, and we got a new booker who is working out some stuff for Europe in total. We have to see where it went.
Sure. Well, Ralf, before I let you go, I have to ask you what's known as the traditional classic metal show question. We've asked this to literally 1,000 bands at this point, and as a bassist, you'll probably have an answer for this. How has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
Only on one funny. No, actually, he not. I saw him once because in the early 90s I was under contract for Europe with GWR, who got him under contract. But I was never influenced by him. If I'm impressed by some bass players, it's more kind of jazz bass players like Percy Jones or like Jaco Pastorius, who is maybe well known to the people.
Sure.
Not so hard from Leggy, at least.
Okay.
He got a special kind of style. I liked it.
Right.
But it's not my way of playing because it's too easy for me.
I hear you. Well, Ralf, as we said, the new album from Mekong Delta is called In a Mirror Darkly. It is out the end of April here in the United States, and as a tradition on the show, Ralf, we always let the artist pick a closing track. So what would you like us to end the interview with, and maybe tell us a quick story about it?
From the actual album?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer that you play the instrumental, because I think if somebody listens to that one, he can see that Mekong Delta could be like a chameleon in a song, because there are so many aspects inside that everybody can find something for himself, I think.
All right. Well, let's check it out right now. This is brand new. It's Mekong Delta right here on your Classic